Welcome to Wadsworth History on Film, a program presented by the Wadsworth Area Historical Society and designed to record the oral history of Wadsworth for posterity. I'm Cesar Carino, your host, and our guest today is Bob Brown, your friendly pharmacist. Bob, there's not a soul in Wadsworth who does not remember you. If we lived here from the early 30s all the way up until the late 80s, because everyone knew who you were. And when we talk about a friendly pharmacist, you were the friendliest pharmacist we ever knew.
Well, thank you.
Never had anything but a very positive attitude and all of that. But you weren't always a pharmacist, right?
No.
No. What were you when you were born?
Well, I was born in Wadsworth, very young.
Very young age.
Right. And
where were you living when you were born here?
I lived on Summit Street, catty-cornered across the street from my grandparents.
And who were they?
It was my father's mother and father, and they lived where the Leatherman home.
Now, I know where that is, but for the sake of history, tell us where that was.
That was on Summit Street, and I do not remember the number.
And what did Summit Street look like at that time where the Leathermans lived?
Oh, my. There was a lot of vacant lots.
Dirt streets?
That's right. And
it went up just so far, and then kind of ended.
That's right.
And it ended in a field.
That's exactly right.
And who were your grandparents?
Well, it was, they lived on Summit, and their name was Brown.
Brown, of course.
And they had 8 children, 4 boys and 4 girls. And my grandfather at that time owned a lot of the land on Summit Street, and there were 2 houses that were just up from Broad that were fairly new. And when I was born, I was brought back to the house catty-cornered across the street from my grandparents.
Right. Now, tell us a little bit about your grandparents and their involvement in Wadsworth from the earlier days.
All right. Now, my grandfather was a GAR veteran, a Civil War
That's right.
veteran.
Grandfather Brown
was
born in 1850-something, wasn't he?
That's right. Calvin.
Calvin Brown.
Calvin Brown. And my grandmother's name was Melissa. And
do you remember her maiden name?
Hoover.
Hoover. From Wadsworth?
No, they were from the Cuyahoga Falls area.
Okay.
And also had relatives in Apple Creek. And
down in this Wayne County.
That's right. In fact, when my father was very young, he lived in Apple Creek before moving to Medina County.
Again. And then your father had 7 brothers and sisters.
That's right.
Now, are those Browns still living around Wadsworth? Do you have any cousins from those 7 brothers and sisters that your father had?
No, I don't. All of them have passed on.
And the cousins of those families?
They're pretty much gone.
And were there any in Wadsworth at all?
Yes, there was an Elton Longenaker.
I remember Elton Longenaker.
Yes, and played football. And
must have been your father's sister's son, right?
That is correct.
Now, he would be in his 80s now, wouldn't he?
That's right.
Yeah.
But he died fairly young.
Yes, he did. I remember the Longenaker livings, probably in the 40s he died.
That's right.
Yes.
I think that I had graduated from college and was in the service when Elton passed away.
I remember when he died. I don't remember, specifically, but I remember, now that you mention it, I do remember that. And he was a cousin.
That's
right. Did
right.
you have other cousins as well, Bob?
Well, I had a cousin, and she had the same name as my wife. Her name was Eileen Brown.
Eileen Brown.
That's right.
A lot of confusion there, too.
That's right. And she was from Willoughby. She lived and was raised in the Willoughby area. And that was my father's brother's daughter.
At one time, our 2 boys were going with girls whose names were Christine, whose name was Christine, and my daughter's name is Christine. We knew that there would be a lot of problems. Now, they didn't marry those girls, but at one time, we would have had 3 Christines in the family.
Right.
That's kind of difficult. Let's get back to your own family now. Then your father was
John Brown.
John Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, that's as common a name as you can get.
That's
John
about
Brown.
right.
And your mother was
Leona.
Leona
Treese was her
Treese,
maiden name.
and she's from Wadsworth.
That's right.
Right, and there are a lot of Treeses in Wadsworth.
That's right.
And who are the relatives in Wadsworth who were the Treeses?
Well, now my grandfather had a farm on Treese Road.
Right.
In fact, the street, I understand, was named after my grandfather.
And what was his first name?
Morgan
Treese.
Morgan Treese.
That's right.
Right, yeah.
And the road was named after Morgan Treese. And
That's right.
where was his farm on Treese Road?
All right, it was from, what was it, Old 94.
Old 94, which was down south of almost where it intercepts at the southernmost part of the southernmost part of the road.
Right.
And what's there right now?
All right. An allotment. He wouldn't believe it. I mean, there are a lot of beautiful homes and allotments there. He owned from 94 almost to Seville Road. All of his property was on the west side
Right.
of Treese Road.
And we had the Kaiser family down there too, if you
That
remember.
is correct.
That's right.
Yes. Mhm.
And that's all allotted.
Right.
And Susie Kaiser, and I'll give you her married name in a couple of minutes, still lives down there.
That's right, they do. Now, that was just beyond my grandfather's
Yes,
property,
right. That's right.
going south.
And Morgan Treese then owned that whole area through there
That's
at one
right.
time. And what is the allotment called now for the year 2014? We may not remember, but what is the allotment called?
By golly, I don't believe I know.
Well, part of it, part of the farm is in the right on Treese Road there, and they're not an allotment per se, such as the circle. What's the name of it? What is the circle down there off Treese Road?
The name of the street?
Yeah.
I don't believe I can tell you.
Well, it'll come to us second.
Right.
The unfortunate thing is that historical presenters and historical hosts are up in years and we forget.
Right.
Hillsdale Circle, I couldn't think of
Hillsdale.
that. Yeah, but
I remember that now.
Yeah, Hillsdale Circle, that's right. Now, his farm did not go that far north, did it? Your grandfather's?
Well, it went clear out to 94.
Oh, it did?
Yes.
Oh, then maybe it
yes.
did.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe it did then. But
that's where he had a dairy farm
Right.
and chicken farm.
That's right.
Both.
As a matter of fact, at one time, Wadsworth had 7 dairies.
Is that right?
Right, 7 dairies. We have some documentation to that effect. There might even be more, but 7 that we knew of. Now, your mother was...
Pardon?
Your mother, who was she?
Leona.
No, I'm
Treese.
sorry, we just got done saying that.
Right.
See what I told you about how we forget things?
Right.
Right. Leona Treese. And are there other Treeses around?
Not many anymore, no. There's a... no, they've
Now,
all
Bob
passed
Treese is a
around.
different family altogether.
That is correct.
Yeah, Bob Treese is not the same family.
Well, yes, his father lives out west someplace, I think in the Arizona area possibly. And I haven't seen him for a long time.
Bob Treese lives on I think, Meadow Drive in Wadsworth.
Yes, yes. Now, he is related.
He's related?
He is related.
Okay, then there is a relationship there.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing to know. Bob, date of your birth?
Let's see. How about October 28th, 1920?
1920, October 28th.
Right.
And that makes you 77 years old.
Will be shortly.
Very, very short.
Right.
As a matter of fact. So for all intent and purposes, you've been around for 77 years.
Right.
You graduated from Wadsworth High School in 1939. And who were the teachers that you remember in the high school at that time?
Well, there was Jimmy Late.
James Late, J.T. Late.
He was an English professor or teacher, and I remember I was very fortunate to stay off of his. He would have those that didn't finish their work for the day coming in an hour before school started, and I was able to keep off of that list.
Describe J.T. Leap a little bit.
Well, he, I think probably in his early life had polio.
He had a crippling
that's right.
disease.
But
Strict,
a very strict person.
very stern.
Right.
Not too terribly much humor,
No, he was all business.
but a good
An
teacher.
excellent teacher.
Excellent teacher. My brothers had him. He left. As a matter of fact, he died before I got to Wadsworth High School. And my brothers had him and fared very well with him, as did you and others. What about some of the other teachers in the high school?
Well, I remember a teacher that I had a lot of fun with, and went down to her home many times, and was Glenna Durr.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
Glenna Durr,
Yeah.
Glenna Lobenthal.
Right, that's right. Her father was mayor of Wadsworth at one time.
Yes, and she is an aunt to Kenny Durr.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
She was a great teacher. We're going to have
Excellent.
Kenny Durr on the program. Very shortly, we're going to have Kenny Durr on the program because, he probably has, well, as a matter of fact, were it not for Kenny Durr, we wouldn't be sitting in this room because he had designed this
That's
entire
right.
school
Yeah.
many years ago. Tell us a little bit about Glenna Durr Lobenthal.
Well, we enjoyed her very much. She was a very friendly teacher.
Oh, gregarious.
And invited many of us down to her home for taffy pulls.
And where was this?
And that was on, not Prospect, just behind the cemetery.
Beck, maybe?
What would the street be?
Well, behind the cemetery?
Let's see, you go up North Pardee.
Okay, North Pardee.
To the
Baldwin?
Baldwin. She lived on Baldwin, just down 2 or 3 houses
From the cemetery?
From the cemetery. Yeah.
Okay, on the south side of the road?
That's right.
On the south side of the road, yes,
Right.
I remember that now. Taffy pulls and all kinds of things.
Oh,
but
yes.
Good teacher. What did she teach?
Well, she was a homeroom teacher,
That's right.
and everyone liked her. Probably she was too much of a good friend to me. I was under her desk once or twice, and I know one time Jean Stauffer lived sit next to me, and I just reached over on her desk and give her pen a toss out through the window.
Why not?
And Glenna Durr says, Bob, says, and this was on the 3rd floor. She says, you run down and get Jean's pen, and she says, for every minute you're gone, you're going to spend 10 minutes after school. So it didn't take me long. I took 2 or 3 steps at a time.
And you got down there, got that pen.
And
Now
Tom,
tell us who Jean Stauffer is.
well, she is Dale Holcomb's wife.
That's right.
That's right.
Jean Stauffer was on our program the other day.
Oh, is that right?
Right. And she was a secretary here in the school
Yeah, for a long time.
years and years and years, and just a great person. And Dale Holcomb was one of your classmates too.
That's right.
And Jean Stauffer
Was in our class
was in your
also.
class, and you flung her pen out the window.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yes.
And did Jean like that?
Just laughed about it.
Just
And
laughed about
when I come back, why she said, Glenna said, all right now, Bob, you better sit with Jean the rest of the class.
Well, that'll take care
of
of
course,
you.
that didn't bother
No.
me at all.
She's a cute little girl. I
Yeah,
can remember her in
right.
high school. Of course, I was a lot younger than she, but she's a cute
Yeah,
little girl.
we're still real good friends. In
Oh,
fact. I was down to their house just a couple, 3 nights ago playing some cards.
They're great people. Elementary school. Where? Lincoln?
Lincoln.
And
attended.
teachers.
Well, my favorite teacher, and I thought at the time that she was my 3rd grade teacher, was also principal of the school, and that was Lottie Mills.
Lottie Mills. She was everybody's teacher.
Oh, yeah, and a good teacher.
Oh, you bet, boy.
Yeah.
There's no question in anyone's
Yeah.
mind. Lottie Mills probably never had more than 2 years of college, if that. But she knew how to teach,
That's
and
right.
she was a good teacher. and
I
some-
believe that her strong suit was mathematics, wasn't it?
Mathematics, yes, it was.
Right.
Lottie, of course, is gone. She would be well over 110 years old
Oh,
now
yes.
if she were living,
Yeah.
or even greater than that.
Yeah.
Now, we have you going through school, and you had to walk from Summit Street down to, well, not down to, yes, it was down to, but somewhat up to Lincoln School. But I'm sure that as you lived so close to the center of town, and Summer Street wasn't that far away.
At that time, I lived on Humboldt.
Oh, you lived on Humboldt, even
when I was
closer yet.
attending Lincoln School.
Even closer yet.
Right.
So you probably spent a lot of time downtown. In the 20s, what did downtown look like to you, a little boy?
Oh my, very quiet.
Very quiet.
We had one traffic light in town, and
Where
it was
was it?
right on the square.
Right on the square.
Next to Tommy Lucas's little shanty there, where he could get out of the elements if needed.
And he was the only policeman, probably.
That's right, and his motorcycle was parked right
there. What color was this motorcycle?
I think that it was black and white.
Was it? I thought it was gray, but I could be wrong.
Well, it could have been.
Right, and that little shack was there all the time.
Oh,
and there was
for a
no
long
heat
time.
in it. No heat
No,
in it. No,
no.
just a little
and just
shack.
large enough for one person.
Yeah, one telephone booth, if you
That's
can call it
right.
that.
That-
And a
yes.
little door that opened and
Right.
you came out of it. What else did you remember about downtown at that time? Was there a store down there that
Well,
you really liked?
yes, we had a bandstand, and it was made of stone, and had restrooms underneath. There was a band concert every Saturday night, and I think the band concert went on until about 11 o'clock.
That late?
Quite late, because I know that I was working in the drugstore at that time, and the farmers would come in and park their car and do their shopping and listen to the band concert, and all the merchants at that time would give gifts, and then there was drawings every 15-20 minutes, and people would maybe win a toaster from Bill Curtis's store, and we would maybe give a box of candy or something like that, or a small camera, and it was always quite a night.
It was a Saturday night, was
There was two popcorn stands down there.
And you remember those popcorn stands?
Oh my,
And
yes.
Who ran one of them and who ran the other one?
Now let's see, Witchy. There was a fellow by the name of
George Witchy.
George Witchy.
With his sister.
I had-
Was it a sister? Mrs. Cale?
Yes, yes. And their popcorn stand was over where the Citizens Bank
Right.
is located.
And then who ran the other one?
By golly, you know, I
Mr. Leatherman, maybe?
don't remember that, but it was where Nielsen's jewelry store was located.
Fellow with a great big tummy on him.
Yes, yeah, Moore.
Moore was the one who lived behind Nielsen's there. He had a store behind Nielsen's.
Yes, you're
I think,
right.
Yeah. Now, the other part of your family is a good wife, and you've been married for, what, 50 some odd years, haven't
Right,
you?
yeah.
And whom did you marry?
Eileen Frederick.
From?
Well, she was born in Copley, moved to Wadsworth when she was about 5 years old, and lived out on top of Acme Hill.
And an apple orchard.
That's right.
Right. And she has a sister, Harriet, or is that a cousin?
Frederick.
No, that's Crawford. I'm sorry, Crawford.
Yeah.
Right. Frederick,
No,
that's right. Yeah.
she has a sister by the name of Maxine.
Maxine Frederick.
Yes.
I was confusing the Fredericks and the Crawfords. I'm
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
Because they had an apple orchard.
They did. That's right. Just out on where the hospital is located now.
Just about in that area. That's
in
right.
that area.
Harriet Crawford was one of the first girl born in Wadsworth Hospital.
Oh, is that right?
1921, yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they first opened, and Bob Clapper was the first boy. Now that's what I've been told. And if I'm wrong, I'll get phone calls. You can be
Oh,
assured
I know,
of that. Because
right.
every single night I receive phone calls. You said this wrong.
Correcting this or that.
As a matter of fact, we had Carol Transu on not too terribly long ago. Carol Moss.
I saw that.
Yes, and I've received many, many calls because one of her sisters lived in Canada, and we didn't say anything about the fact that her sister lived in Canada, so we'll have to correct that eventually. So.
Right.
But people know everybody in Wadsworth, and so
yes.
So don't make any mistakes about the Browns. Because
I enjoyed listening to Carol. There was one thing that I was disappointed in, that she didn't tell about she and I playing a lot of tennis together.
The two of you played tennis together.
Right.
Well, we correct that one then.
You're
This is
right.
We'll tell Carol that we corrected that one.
Right.
Now, Bob, tell us a little bit about Eileen Frederick and how you met her and when you were married, and then after you were married, having children and so forth?
Well, she moved from Copley to Wadsworth when she was 5 years old. Her father had the pear and apple and peach orchards on top of that.
And most of the boys worked out there.
That's right.
In the summertime, picking
Yes,
apples.
right. And her father was probably, as I understand it, one of the first farmers in Medina County to contour farm.
That's interesting to know. I didn't know that.
There was a apple that he developed.
Right. That I remember.
And it was called the Frederick apple.
Frederick apple.
Right. And
Tell us what it was like. Do you remember it? The apple?
Oh, yes. It was a red apple and had the flavor of a Grimes Golden. It was a solid apple, not a mealy apple.
No.
And he was very successful with that particular strand of apples. He also was vice president of the Akron Growers Association, where they had the farmers market.
In Akron.
That's right. That land was sold to the University of Akron.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah. And at that time, he and a fellow from Hartville, I guess, owned the land and were
The land was
officers.
right south of the University of Akron.
That is correct.
Right. And it was sold to the University of Akron in an urban renewal project, probably 30, 35, 40, 50 years ago. I'm not sure when. Remember?
Quite a while ago.
A long time ago. Long time ago. Now, tell us what contour farming is for those people who may never...
Well, it wasn't straight
furrows.
They followed the terrain of the land so that it wouldn't wash.
That's right.
In severe weathers.
That's right.
And
it was, as a matter of fact, he probably was criticized for it because
in the beginning,
furrows are supposed to be straight.
That's right.
And that area out there was such that you almost had to use the contour.
He was very active in the Grange organization.
Right.
And held offices in that a lot of his lifetime. His brother that lived in Copley was state Grange master.
Oh, is that right?
For quite a few years.
What was his name? Uncle
Frederick. Right. By golly, his first name escapes me.
It'll come
right
to you.
now.
It'll
Yeah,
come to you.
Yeah.
Now, you and Eileen were married when? You met her in high school.
That's right.
I mean, you
Yeah.
met her before high school.
Right.
But you started going with her in high school because she
Right.
went to Centralized.
That's right.
And you were at Central, and you met in the 10th grade.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And my cousin, Vida Beck at that time.
Vida Beck.
Vida Fixler is her maiden
Yes,
name.
she graduated in 1940.
Tom and I were good friends, and the first time I met Eileen was on a blind date. And Vida Beck, or Fixler, was the one that knew Eileen Frederick from Esham School. And I guess I was a sophomore in high school at that time, and that's when we met.
You met.
And
it continued for
that's
many,
right.
many years.
Married.
How is Vida Beck your cousin?
Well, now she is on the Treese side, and it would be more her mother. Her mother was
Morgan's sister.
No.
Oh.
No. That was a daughter.
Morgan's daughter.
Morgan's daughter. Right. My mother's
that's right.
sister.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
my
It's
mother's-
your mother's sister.
Right. Yeah.
That's right, exactly. And she went to Centralized School as well.
Right. And
Came to the town school, or that's what they called it at that time, and she met you. And you pretty well had her as your girlfriend, I understand, for the entire session. Did you?
Right. That's correct.
Then what happened immediately after high school? What
Well-
was going on in the world?
Yes. Well, World War II was
bet.
kind of breathing down my neck.
And what did it do to you?
Well, I, at that time, was enrolled at Ohio Northern University in the College of Pharmacy.
Right.
And I had just finished my junior year when the president said that anyone in any recognized college could get 1 year deferment to get their degree. So I was allowed to get my degree before going into the service. And of course, right after getting out of the service, getting out of college, I was immediately in the service.
And you did not have your pharmacy degree at that time, did you?
No, I had...
Pre-pharmacy?
Well, no, I had my pharmacy degree.
Oh, you
But I
finished?
hadn't taken state board.
Oh, okay.
So they sent me down to the induction center in Columbus, Fort Hays, and since I hadn't taken state board, they thought that it would be well for them and for myself if I could stick around close and then be able to take my state board here in Ohio. So they couldn't make me more than a 28-day man at Columbus without putting me in the cadre. So they sent me to Fletcher General Hospital in Cambridge, Ohio. And I stayed there until I could take my state board. Then, of course, I wasn't needed at Fletcher General Hospital, so the service was building and opening a new hospital in Martinsburg, West Virginia. That's right in between Hagerstown and Washington, D.C. So they sent me down there to help put the pharmacy together, and it wasn't open as yet. There were 125 buildings, all just one story because they could not get steel, and all of the 125 buildings were connected with connecting corridors. They told me at one time that there were 3.5 miles of connecting corridors.
Wow.
At Newton D. Baker General Hospital. And golly, I was down there for about 2 years. And the reason that I was there so long, instead of having a technician's number, which was an 841 or something like that, I had a 149, which was a professional number. And all of the professional numbers, which included the veterinarians and the nurses and the doctors and the pharmacists, were frozen in the 5th Service Command. So they couldn't ship me out. So once Germany fell, why, of course, no one was frozen. And I immediately was released from Newton D. Baker, and they sent me up to Cryle in Cleveland. And I worked there a very short time before going out to a leadership school in the West someplace. Ended up out on the West Coast and shipped out to Manila. And I was in charge of a manufacturing pharmaceutical lab in the city of Manila. We manufactured things for the famous 80th General. I had several first aid stations, Bataan being one of them. And of course, at that time, the mountain passes around Luzon had been bombed closed by the Japanese. So every Wednesday, I was issued a 36-foot Chris Craft and 3 Navy personnel, and I took my supplies over to Bataan across the bay. That was a big piece of water. That was about a 2.5-hour round trip.
I'm sure it would be.
But I was stationed at St. Joseph's Academy, which was a nunnery school before World War II. And during the Japanese occupation was their communications center. And that is where I had my lab and pharmacy. And my formula for making elixir, terpene, hydrate, and codeine, which a lot of the services servicemen called GI Gin because it was tasted like, they said, a stale martini. And then I manufactured elixir phenobarbital, and the formula for that also made 5 gallons at a time. Of course, we made Whitfield's ointment, and instead of making 1 or 2 ounces, my formula made 5 pounds at a time. I had one American soldier that was a chemist working for me, and the rest of my help were all Filipino. And at this St. Joseph's Academy, we also housed about 172 American nurses. They came in there from the Hawaiian Islands and then were dispatched from there clear to the Westpac area, almost clear to Japan. And so Colonel Poor, P-O-E-R, was a famous surgeon in the South, and he was my immediate superior. And he came to me one day and said, you know, we ought to maybe try and open some kind of a PX for the girls, the nurses here. So 2 nights a week, I run a little PX for them, and they got their 6 bottles of Coca-Cola and 6 bottles of beer, and then we had gum and Kleenex and personal items and stuff like that, and I'd keep it open for a couple hours on Tuesday night and Thursday night, and gosh, they paid me an extra $100 a month for that.
That's great.
That was a lot of money at that time.
What was your rank at the time, Bob?
I was a tech sergeant.
Tech sergeant,
That's
doing all of these things.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you ever get your license? I mean, did you ever pass your
Oh yes.
your boards?
Oh yes. Oh yes. Before going down to Newton D. Baker General Hospital
So
in
you had your
Martinsburg.
boards. That's wonderful.
Right.
Bob, that story is so great because it probably was one of the first service people we've ever had who had an internship, a 2-year or 3-year internship for your life's work.
Right.
I mean, first of all, you were a pharmacist.
Right.
And you made medicine.
Right.
And I was intrigued by the fact that you made 5 pounds of this balm rather than 2 ounces of it.
Right.
And I suspect that it would, if you were to sell that at the regular market price, it would be in the millions of dollars.
That's right. Yeah.
$5 worth, or 5 pounds worth. And then after that, you opened this little PX. Well, at Brenny's, when you were there all those years, that's exactly what you did.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly what you did.
It was
So
my cup of tea.
that is wonderful. When did you get out of the service then, Bob?
Well, in December of 47.
December of 47.
Right.
You were there for a long time
Yes.
then.
See, because I was down at Newton D. Baker's for 2 years. Now, I wasn't over in Manila too long because I had 2 children, and I had enough points to come home.
But you were in from 1943 to 47. That's 4 years.
Well, it wasn't quite 4 years.
Well.
It was 3 years and so many months. Yes.
Well,
Right.
in your mind, it was probably 14 years.
Right. Yeah.
Because you were away from your family and your
Right.
wife. And now you had 2 children. When were they born?
Well,
Bob was born
I had
when?
4 children.
I mean, at that time.
Oh, yes. Yes, I had a boy and a girl.
Bob?
No, Denny.
Oh, Denny.
Yeah,
Denny.
and Geraldine. Now, Geraldine is my oldest child, and she now lives in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we'll be spending Thanksgiving with her this year. But she is a speech and hearing therapist and assistant principal of a school in Charlotte.
Wow. But she's about 52 years old now, isn't she?
Correct, yeah.
Then Denny.
Denny, and he is in the lab at Firestone and has been there ever since he got out of school.
And how old is Denny now?
Well, he would be 51, right.
And then you have 2 more beyond that.
Right. 8 years later,
Yes.
why we had another family.
And what was that first boy's name?
Phil,
Philip.
and he's with Rite Aid.
And he is a pharmacist.
No, he's in, works as a, well, he manages, he's in management.
He's in management.
Right,
But he looks just
management.
like you, doesn't he?
It's Denny that is
Oh,
in the
Denny.
lab, in the research lab
Looks
at
just like
Firestone.
you.
That's right.
Matter of fact, I can't. Sometimes we could not tell you apart.
That's right.
So Denny's the one who looks just like you.
That's right.
And then following Phil, whom do we have?
Pammy.
Pam, and how old is Pam?
Well, Pammy is in her 40s.
In her 40s.
And she lives in Charlotte, or she lives in Boca Raton, Florida. Her husband is a lawyer in Boca Raton, and that's where Eileen and I are in the winter. And we're less than 4 miles from her, and she has 4 children. And
4 grandchildren
did
down
some
there.
Montessori work, which you know what that is.
Yes.
And also did a lot of work as a paralegal for a lady lawyer that was in adoption work.
I see.
And Pammy is not working anymore because she has a big home in fact 3,600 square feet.
Wow.
Home, 5-bedroom, 4 children, 2 dogs and a husband. So she just didn't have time to do a whole lot of work. She had to give the work with this lawyer up because she was flying all over Florida 2 and 3 times a week, and was away from home too much.
That's much too much.
Right.
Tell us now, we're going to run out of time. We always run out of time in these programs. Tell us now about how you began your career back in the States. I guess we can say that since you came from Manila, back in the States. And you didn't start at Brenny's right off the bat, did you?
No.
Where did you start?
All right. Golly, when I was 11 years old, I had a magazine route. I worked for the Crowell Publishing Company, and their 3 big magazines was the Collier's, the Woman's Home Companion, and the American. And I worked for them for several months, and they made a suggestion that I try and get some other boys to start routes in Wadsworth. And I did.
Who were they?
Well, by golly, you know, Arwood Sterrett was one.
Arwood Sterrett.
The other ones, one was Jim Favinger, I believe.
Yes, Jim Favinger,
and,
your age.
The other ones, I don't remember their names anymore. Golly, I was only 11 and 12 years old. But getting these fellows to sell the Colliers and so on, I got 1 or 2 pennies for every magazine that they sold also.
Mm-hmm.
So
You became an entrepreneur at an early age.
right, and I had my little cards and pin, you know, and I thought I was doing quite well at that time. Then Bryce Neal came to me and says, "Bob, how about we've got a Beacon Journal route that I'm going to split. You can have 25 customers, and we're going to give 25 customers to another party." And I had that for a little over a year. My route went down South Lyman, up Park, and out east. And they had contests every month, and if you got new customers. So I just had that route a little over a year, and we were allowed at that time to sell our route for 10 cents a customer, and by gosh, I got $4.90.
You probably thought you were rich.
So that's right. So I just about doubled my route in a little over a year. I sold my Akron Beacon Journal route to Arwood Sterrett.
Arwood Sterrett, who was your age.
That's right, in my class.
And so was Jim Favinger.
That's right.
And Bryce Neal was the father of Walter Neal.
That's right.
Who was the one of the artists at the University of Akron, at the Beacon Journal.
Akron Beacon Journal, right.
Beacon Journal, who did the cartoons.
Yes.
And did some of the, and he was married to Pat, can't think of her name right now, but both of them are dead.
Lived up on Overlook, I think.
Yes, so both of them are gone now.
Yes.
And then he had a brother, Skip Neal.
Right.
And talking about brothers, what about your other brothers and sisters in your family?
Well, I just have one sister.
And her name is?
Donna Chapman.
Yes.
And she has always lived in Worcester since she married. And her husband was in the City Hall in the engineering department.
And she's younger than you are?
Yes.
Yes, by 4 or 5 years, right?
Oh, no, less than 2.
Less than 2 years?
Yeah.
I thought she was considerably younger than you
No.
were. Okay.
No.
Now we have to go back to, you had the paper route and you also had the magazine route, and you became an entrepreneur, became fabulously wealthy because you got $4 and some odd cents for your
for
route.
my route, right.
And from there you went to what?
Well, you know, one afternoon I was sitting at the soda fountain at Brenneman's Pharmacy.
And they describe that soda fountain because it's no longer there.
Oh, no, it was a great place and very popular place.
Everyone went there.
That's right. There were 9 booths and 9 stools across the front of the buffet.
And who would be serving?
Well, Nadine Curtis, her name, or her maiden name was Nadine Williams.
Williams, right.
And I know that she had just served me a sundae, chocolate ice cream with a marshmallow on it, and someone tapped me on the shoulder, and I looked around, and it was Mr. Brenneman, Glenn Brenneman. And he says, Bob, he knew me because we attended the same church. Trinity.
Trinity, at that time, Reformed Church.
Or that's right, Trinity, Evangelical and Reformed Church.
Right. You know.
And he says, Bob, he says, before you leave the store, come back to the prescription counter. He says, I want to talk to you a minute. And I knew that I hadn't done anything wrong. So
of course not. You were an angel.
Oh, not quite. And so, by golly, I went back and I said, he said, Bob, how would you like to work in the drugstore? Well, I had been passing papers, you know. Oh, I was so excited. I ran home, clear home without stopping. Mm-hmm. And so, my golly, I was only 13, short time to be 14. And you no longer can hire people at that age.
Absolutely not.
So I started working for Mr. Brenneman and did a lot of work, of course, at the soda fountain. He had me coming down to the store. My gosh, issued me some keys, and I opened up the store and swept out and got the trash out at 7 o'clock in the morning, and worked for 45 minutes or an hour before going to school. And had to wait on a lot of people on their way to work, mostly men that come in for their package of mail pouch or a little snuff.
Right.
And I made the syrups for the fountain. Down in the basement we had a place where we made our chocolate syrup, 5 gallons at a time, and simple syrup. I still know the formulas for those. You never forget that, you know. And because all of our fruits and so on from J. Hunkerford Smith came in concentrated form, and that's why I had the simple syrup in order to cut those, like the pineapple and the butterscotch and strawberry, and all of that was in concentrated form, and we had to thin it with simple syrup.
Before we leave Nadine Williams, tell us who Nadine's sister was.
Nadine's sister? She had a brother.
No sisters?
I didn't think so.
Who was Mangle Williams?
Magil Williams.
Magil, I'm sorry.
No, by golly, they were not related.
They were not related?
No.
Magil Williams is the one who wrote the alma mater for
That's right.
Wadsworth, right.
Yeah, and she had a younger sister that was in my class, Justine.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Justine. I confused Justine with
Nadine.
Nadine.
Right.
Justine and Nadine.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
right. Absolutely.
I don't believe they were.
They're not related.
Not related. No.
Justine. I was thinking of Justine Williams.
Yeah.
But this is Nadine Williams.
Right.
Okay. So then, what happened after you had $4 and you were living really high on the hog, and you were sweeping out and you were selling some things in the morning, and now you're 14 years old.
Right.
And ready to retire?
Not quite, because I know even as a registered pharmacist, when I got out of the service, my first week's pay as a pharmacist was only $47.50.
For the entire week.
For the entire
And
week.
that probably included going in at 6 o'clock in the morning and opening the store,
Right.
selling some mail pouch and
It
some
was
snuff.
not a 40-hour week.
No, it was not.
I've
the
never
Brothers
known
was
of-
open until 11 o'clock at night, wasn't
That's exactly right. Yeah, and on Saturday nights, when I was in high school, it was difficult for us to get out of there by 12 o'clock because of the soda fountain.
it? That's right.
Our place was the last place the people would stop before going home. They would wait for the concert and had already completed their shopping, and thought they would come in and have a little ice cream and sodas before going home for the weekend.
Let's shock the living daylights out of our young people right now and tell us how much a sundae cost at that time and what was in it.
All right. The most expensive thing on our menu was our banana split, and it was 35 cents. Yeah. We had sodas for 15 cents. Coca-Colas were a nickel. Now, Mr. Brenneman had it figured out. Our Coca-Cola syrup came in 10-gallon wooden kegs, and we knew that to make a Coca-Cola, 5-cent Coca-Cola, our cost was a cent and a half.
So you made 4.5 cents on it.
3.5 cents.
3.5 cents on
right.
it, right.
Yeah. But, and we had milkshakes, and probably our most popular item on the menu was our famous chocolate sodas.
Chocolate sodas.
We had people coming over in the evenings from Barberton and all over to have a chocolate soda at Brenneman's Pharmacy.
15 cents.
That's right.
Now, on the banana splits, how many bananas were in those?
Well, it was a whole banana, and I don't think that is true now.
No.
No. And we would have a dip of vanilla, a dip of chocolate, and a dip of strawberry. Then on the strawberry, we would put some strawberry topping. On the vanilla ice cream, we would put pineapple. And on the chocolate, we would put chocolate. Then, of course, we had these pressure cans of whipped cream.
And there was real whipped cream, too.
That's correct, and had to be refrigerated. And then a maraschino cherry on the top.
35 cents.
35 cents, and they were beautiful.
They were, and they were huge. They're just
Right.
buckets. And people always were in there from right after school until way late at night.
Yeah.
In the meantime, they had a huge pharmacy business too, because there were a couple other pharmacists, but this was the probably pharmacy of choice, simply because it was right there in the corner and you had good people.
Now, you knew that Mrs. Brenneman was also registered.
Yes.
And we had Merle Jelinek and Jay LaCrone and myself and Mrs. Brenneman and Brenny, Glenn. And that was 5 pharmacists at one time. And I was told that there were only 17 drugstores in all of Ohio that had 5 or more registered pharmacists, and we were one of them.
Well, when did Susie Houston come?
Susie Houston worked for me. This was after we incorporated in the 50s, and she graduated from Purdue University.
Yes.
And worked, gosh, I don't know, 12, 14 years for us.
Well, her husband was my assistant dean at the
That's what I understand. I knew that.
Yes. And so one of the first things that impressed our entire staff was the fact that his wife was a pharmacist.
Right, and a good one.
And outstanding, no question. And so was Mrs. Brenneman. I mean, she was, and she was probably one of the very first women pharmacists around.
Right. Now, she graduated from Ohio State. Brenny, or I always say Brenny, that's what we called him.
I've never called him Mr. Brenneman in my life, and I typically don't do that because everyone called him Brenny.
Right. He graduated from Ohio Northern, a 2-year program.
As you did.
Right. Now, when I was in school, we had to almost complete a 5-year program in 4 years because of World War II. We had an accelerated program, and it was rough.
You bet it was rough. Clara Beck Brenneman, one of the very, very first ones. Tell us a little bit about the Brennemans themselves. We have, we're trying to get Mary Brenneman in here. She lives in Arizona right now. But until we can get a hold of her, tell us about the Brennemans. He was actually a legend in town.
That's right.
But we knew him only as Brenny. We knew him only as the pharmacist. We knew him as only driving Buicks. We knew him as a very, very powerful Republican. Right. And we knew him as a person who was as open-hearted as anyone could possibly be, and a very effusive person. Tell us a little bit about some of the things we don't know anything about.
Yeah. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Brenneman were wonderful to me. Great people. And Brenny was good to a lot of people.
Oh, you bet he was.
In Wadsworth. He saw to it that many were able to get to college.
That's right.
And he did a lot of work for Trinity Church. He did a lot of work and benefits for the American Legion. Very active in the American Legion. Was very active in the Masonic Order, and was a good worker there. He and Jerry Hall did a lot of work for that organization, and I know that he was certainly very good to me. I know one time he said, "Bob, get a hold of your girlfriend, and Claire and I want to take you up to the exposition in Cleveland," and things like that. And he enjoyed playing golf, and he took me along many times as his caddy when I was a young kid. And when he would go on vacations and so on, why, he would give me the delivery car to use while he was gone. And I certainly owe a lot to the Brenneman family.
He never aged, did he?
No.
He didn't look old, and he never acted old, and he was always very positive.
That's correct.
And he had a tremendous bedside manner with everyone. People like to go to him, and of course they like to come to you because of your bedside manner with him. As a matter of fact, I can still remember long before pharmacists were urged to discuss medications with their patients, that you would be extremely kind to say not only what this medication does, but make sure you take it at the right time and take every single one of them.
Right.
And remember, we're going to check on you if you don't take every single one of them. Oh my, and I knew fully well that that was just a canned little speech, but it was so sincere, and we loved it. We came back for it time and time again. Tell us some of the other people who worked in Brenny's, and I'll give you a couple of clues there to start you off. Mary Fraze.
Mary Fraze, my golly. I believe that Mary Fraze worked for me probably, oh golly, 17, 18, 19 years.
She was there all
the time. She was pretty much head of cosmetics.
Right.
We
cards and things of that nature.
That's right. I had her schedule the help and work out vacations, so that because we employed 11 or 12.
Well, you'd have to, because you're open
at that time.
You're open 7 days a week.
That's right, 84 hours a week. You know,
84.
That's a long week. So
that's twice plus a week, a full week.
Right. And we took in East Ohio Gas Company bills.
Right.
And took in between 250 and 300 of those a month. That created traffic, and she took care of all of that. We got a nickel for each one of those.
Wow.
That come into the store. And she did all of my billing, and very conscientious worker. Wasn't satisfied with everything that she had accomplished during the day, would even take work home with her.
Very fine person. Unfortunately, she's gone now.
Right.
Good person.
Right.
We're going to run out of time, as we always do here, Bob, as I said before, so let me quickly ask you some of the other kinds of things that you've done. You were a student, you were an entrepreneur at age 11, made $4 on your big kill, you went to the service, you actually were working as a pharmacist in the Philippines, came back, started with Brenny's and so forth. You have a life after drugstores. What is that life after drugstores?
Well, I enjoy golf.
And what else?
And cards.
What kind of cars?
Well, I belong to two clubs. One are all pharmacists, and we meet every 3 or 4 weeks. Just had a meeting here not too long ago down in Green Township. And the other one, a bunch of that has been together for 30, almost 40 years. And they're businessmen from Wadsworth.
And what's the name of that club?
Well, it started out on Franks Avenue. My wife had a surprise birthday party for me and invited all the men on the Franks Avenue area. And at that time was Edgar Bell and
Now gone.
Bob Smith and
Gone.
Well, Bob Smith is still living.
Which Bob?
Bob Smith.
Oh, Bob Smith.
Bob Smith.
Yes, I was
yeah.
thinking the one who was the body shop man.
Oh yeah, and Gay West is
Gay West.
in the group, and Tom Gertner and
Tom's still with us.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get Tom Gertner to come on the program.
Was that right? He will be a good one.
If I can get a hold of him.
Yeah, yeah. They're gone a lot.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, lives in Florida also in the winter. And
It takes me,
so-
I have to make 5 phone calls to get one person to come on this program.
Right. Gay West is in that group.
Yeah. Now, is Gay still living? He was with the township for years.
Gay West, he had Cardinal Foods
Right.
down south of town and retired here just about a year or so ago, and lives on West Good.
West Good. But he was down in the township.
Not West Good, East Good.
When the Cardinal Foods was down in the township, right?
No, down south of town, on the corner.
Oh, that's right, that's
Yeah.
right. That was Redbird at the, in the
Yes,
township.
yes,
I'm sorry. Yes,
yeah.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
Gay West.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sorry.
yeah, but he has retired. In fact, I was just up to his house yesterday, and he's in our golf group at he and Dr. Wertzler and Rush Johnson and Gay and I are a foursome that have
Foursome.
been together for 8-10 years.
Well, we had Dave Wertzler, Dr. Dave Wertzler on the program not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very good person for this program particularly. Quickly, Bob, tell us about the name of that club so that we can have that for historical evidence. Do you have a name for the Franks Avenue group?
That was it.
They
Franks
just call it
Avenue.
Franks Avenue.
Yeah, right.
Now, what about this one where all of you are pharmacists? I suspect if someone says, I have a headache, does anyone have an aspirin? The answer probably don't have one.
They're scattered. They're all in this area. One lives in Barberton, one lives in Greene. There's 2 that are in Akron, and there's one in Norton. And myself, and we get together. In fact, we have a meeting on the 19th of November, our next one.
What about automobiles?
Automobiles. Well, I enjoy
Old automobiles.
I enjoy old automobiles.
What kind do you have?
Well, I had 4.
4.
I had a 1923 Model T Touring, a 1926 Model T Touring. I have a 1930 Model A coupe with a rumble seat, and I have a Model A Roadster, a 31. I still have the 30 and the 31.
Would you believe that in the 40s I bought a 1931 Model A Ford with a rumble seat in it and paid $125 for it, and a few years later I tried to sell it and I couldn't get $50 for it, so I sold for $45. How much would that bring today?
My son and I just got back from Hershey, Pennsylvania. Every year we go down there to the antique car show and swap meet. It's huge. Supposedly the largest one in the world.
Probably so.
Phil and I walked for 4 days down there, and and we didn't see it all.
We didn't see it all.
No, it's that big. Of course, there's a show of classic automobiles, a show of antique racers. They had a museum. There's a museum there, and of cars that are for sale, and they run anywhere from 200,000 to over 1 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that Model A Ford of mine would have brought what today?
Well, now I bought a new car here about 10 months ago, and have always left it outside because I have a 30 and a 31 Model A in the garage, and my neighbors asked why I didn't get my new car inside. And I says, well, my 2 Model A's are worth more than
More than
my
the new car. Bob, we have come to the end of the hour, unfortunately. These they end so quickly. We want to thank you. You have been a legacy in Wadsworth. You continue to be a legacy in Wadsworth, and someone who everyone not only admires but loves as well. Thank you, Bob, for being on our program today.
Well, I enjoyed it, Caesar.